Welcome to a different type of sustainability presentation. Because it's 2023, you don't need to hear anything from me about how important of an issue this is, but we have seen a lot of hype in past years about how much consumers will get behind sustainable travel options with limited follow-through. Because why haven't eco-hotels blown up by now? And why is over-tourism still such a severe problem when travelers claim to care so deeply about the places they visit? To answer these tough questions, we needed to design a study different from what we had seen elsewhere in the marketplace. So we blinded the first half of a consumer study of a survey so that people would answer questions about their travel behaviors, not knowing that researchers would be looking at it through the lens of sustainability. And when we did ask about sustainability, we didn't skip any logical steps in how we handled it. It was important to get a deep understanding of exactly how much people know about this and how they perceive it. And we rounded that out with a set of interviews with industry insiders from around the world. Our definition of sustainability is holistic, including many things that could keep a place livable and visitable for years to come. That includes classical environmental facets of sustainability, but also burdens on infrastructure like over-tourism and cultural and economic sustainability. What did we find? In short, people don't act as greenly as they say they will. The money is not where the mouth is. Let's start with an example from transportation. Across markets where we did this study in the US and Europe, around half of travelers said that they were more likely to choose a method of transportation for its carbon footprint than for convenience. That should put us in a fantastic place. But what happens when we cross-reference that belief data with the actual behavioral data that people reported to us before they knew that they were participating in a study about sustainability? Then the actual people who are choosing transportation for environmental reasons goes down to more like 1 in 10. And it's not just happening with transportation. With lodging, again, around half of people say that they're more likely to choose a form of accommodation for its environmental friendliness than for its price. But when we ask people how they narrow down comparable properties that already have similar price, location, and comfort, only 6 to 13% of travelers said that environmental friendly policies were even in their top 5 considerations choosing between competitive properties. So at this point, you might be thinking, Madeline, you're just looking at this wrong, because not everybody in the population cares about sustainability. And those people, they're screwing this up. They're corrupting your data set. And I was really concerned about that as well. So we also went and we cut the data to see what happens with the different groups based off of whether they're people who think about living sustainably in their everyday lives or they don't. And what we learned was that people are more likely to choose travel components for sustainability if they're sustainability oriented at home. But it's truly still a minority of them who are choosing those travel components for green reasons. And if they don't think about sustainability at home, it's a really small fraction who are choosing travel components for sustainability. Things get a little interesting when we look at it through the lens of destination selection. Because overcrowding, over-tourism, that's a pain point for travelers. It can have a direct negative impact on their trip. So what happens with that belief behavior gap when travelers actually experience the negative implications of their decisions? Again, around half of travelers say that they would rather stay in a place that's less famous but also less crowded than stay somewhere famous but full of other tourists. And here, when something actually has a negative impact on their trip, we see that the follow-through is better. The belief behavior gap starts to close. Still a significant drop-off, but when travelers feel the burn from these decisions, they're more likely to follow through on their actions, though there's still work to be done. We have seen time and time again that travelers echo that they want to support local businesses. They want to feel like their purchases that they make when they travel leave the communities they visit better off. But after seeing all the discrepancies between belief and behavior in other parts of sustainability, it made us ask, are travelers really going local as often as they say they are? The baseline here is that up to 2 in 3 travelers say that they want the money they spend while on their leisure travel to benefit the communities that they visit. The problem is that to buy local, you first have to understand what is local, right? So we asked travelers, on your most recent trip, did you ask or check to see if an option was locally owned or sourced? And the answer is that really not many people were doing that. Fewer than 1 in 4 travelers asked about any given option, and if they were going to ask about whether an option was locally owned or sourced, it was most likely to be food. So, emotionally, yes, travelers care about making sure their purchases support the places that they visit, but they are not taking the practical steps to follow through and inform those good decisions. We see that manifest as well when it comes to lodging decisions. Only up to 14% of the travelers who stayed in paid lodging prioritized locally owned properties when choosing between competitive properties of similar price, location, and comfort. Seeing all of those discrepancies really begged the question for us. Do travelers know what sustainability means from a practical perspective? Do they know what it means to travel sustainably? We asked more deeply about what people understood about the definition of sustainable travel, and here a lot of the mysteries of that belief-behavior gap began to unravel. First off, a lot of travelers find the standards for sustainable travel to be confusing to keep track of. And you can't do the right thing if you don't know what the right thing is. Problematically, if you look at this graph behind me, the people who are sustainability oriented, they feel more confused about what to do. And those are the people who are the best candidates to convert to more sustainable travel behaviors, and they're feeling more befuddled than the people who don't care. What do consumers know about what traveling sustainably means? I have to caution this by saying that no more than 56% of travelers in any market recognized any sustainability measure that we tested. So knowledge is low overall, but there was an area of sustainable travel measures that they recognized better, and those were environmental measures. So these are both things that travelers can do at home, and they've also enjoyed years of being buoyed by a lot of public service campaigns, a lot of public awareness campaigns to encourage these behaviors. So the things they were more likely to know about how to travel sustainably were not littering, recycling, avoiding single-use plastics, conserving electricity or water in their hotels. Outside of the US, knowledge of public transportation was also better. In terms of the economic aspects or the cultural aspects that they recognize, obeying rules on what to touch or handle, obeying rules on where to go, respecting local customs and traditions, and avoiding purchase of illegal drugs or contraband were the things that they recognize better. A noteworthy thing to call out is that over-tourism is not a particularly recognized area of sustainability from travelers. Only 13 to 21% recognize staying in off-the-beaten-path destinations as a form of sustainable travel. Now, some people are doing it anyway because, as I said before, crowds, over-tourism, these bother people. But this choice is seen as more of a general travel preference. It's never been framed to them before as a green decision. Another extremely important consideration when it comes to that belief-behavior gap with sustainability is that just because travelers think that something is an important issue does not mean they believe that it's their responsibility to fix it. Only 19 to 26% of travelers believe they travel frequently enough to have a significant impact on the environment. If someone only took 1 or 2 leisure trips in the past year, they're particularly unlikely to think they travel enough to have an impact. That can be an issue because cumulatively, those people who only take 1 or 2 trips, they're still a sizable chunk of the traveling population. And when we asked travelers their opinion on who should bear that primary responsibility for reducing the overall carbon footprint of travel, they were incredibly split here. So about up to 1 in 4 believe that, sure, it falls to them, it falls to the individual traveler to fix it. But many people also believe that it's the role of government or even travel providers to address reducing the overall carbon footprint. That holds true for economic sustainability as well. Travelers are much more likely to believe that it's the role of the government or even destination organizations to keep the money spent within the community. That helps explain why they're not bending over backwards to understand where their money goes after they spend it. They just don't think it's their job to figure this part out. In making the business case for sustainability, there's been a lot of research that focuses on tolerance for green premiums. And for better or for worse, travelers now have internalized the idea that sustainable options will also be more expensive. 36 to 47% of travelers across the markets we looked at in US and Europe believe that green options will also be more costly. And interestingly, the more somebody thinks about sustainability at home, the more likely they are to believe that a sustainable travel option is going to be more expensive. That's not to say there's no tolerance for premiums at all. On average, 10 to 15% more was the accepted premium that people would pay across the categories of transportation, lodging, and tours and activities. Keep in mind, that's only if they're able to recognize at time of booking that the option is sustainable. So if an ADR for a non-sustainable hotel option is $100 in a given area, they would pay $110 to $115 for something that they were able to recognize as more sustainable. At this point, I know I've talked a lot about all the ways that people don't follow through on the green behaviors they say they're going to do. I don't want anyone to feel pessimistic. After doing this research, I myself am actually an optimist. I don't think that this belief-behavior gap is coming from a bad place. On the contrary, I think that people want to believe in the best of themselves. They want to believe that they'll make the right decision. The problem that we have to accept in the industry is that that's just often not the reality. And it's important to understand where people are finding motivation and where they're finding inertia. Here are some practical suggestions I have based on this research for ways to move forward with consumers. There are both supply and demand-sided reasons for the sustainability belief-behavior gap. So on the supply side, more sustainable options need to be available to begin with. And importantly, to be viable, these sustainable options, they have to meet core traveler requirements first. You can't sell something on virtue of it being sustainable alone. You have to meet traveler standards, and then sustainability can be used as a competitive factor. On the demand side, travelers don't always think to vet options as sustainable at the time of booking, so green options need to be clearly labeled, demarcated, prominent, easy to find. That's especially important if you want to charge a premium for it. And on the subject of premiums, you really can't have cost barriers and mass adoption at the same time. Travelers are not going to support this if they think it's only a rich man's cause, so push sustainable options at a variety of price points. Travelers are most cognizant of the environmental sides of sustainability, but a lot of education is still needed around other parts like over-tourism or cultural or economic sustainability. My final word that I want to leave you with is just because something like sustainability is a well-known problem in the industry, that does not mean consumers recognize it. So educate, educate, educate. Teach travelers what the matters of concern are and inspire them to push for collective change and care for the places we visit. We've spent a lot of time approaching this issue, assuming travelers understand this and care and pursue it in their booking decisions, when frankly, that hasn't been the case. So let's meet travelers where they are and build understanding from the ground up. because armed with the right knowledge of human behavior with this issue, there's so much that we can do to grow together. Thank you.